48th Street now. Protest is turned off of O Street. We are asking Lincoln Police right now for an update. Haven't heard back yet. Not surprising. Obviously, they're very busy and have been since the protest started last night at 27th and O. And it looks like the protest is once again kind of coming to a stop here. Police have traffic blocked off on the sides of 48th Street, letting the protesters through. Right now we're right by the Target and making our way up to the Raising Cane's restaurant. And we got lots of people honking their horns right now, cheering. Cars trying to get out of the way as best as they can. The crowd, I would say, starting to dissipate now. There's a car with, I would say, half a dozen people on top of it. Who knows how many inside. The crowd's starting to dissipate just a little bit now. I would say maybe we're closer to 150 or so people, but again, it's hard to tell right now. It's very fluid, very active. And law enforcement continuing to monitor the situation. We can see them in the sky. We know they've been out ahead of this group of protesters all night. And so far, so good. Sort of starting to regroup here, it looks like, at the intersection of 48th and R Street. And again, not sure if the group has a destination that may be pre-planned. We aren't aware of that. It's very well that they could have a final destination in mind. They're starting to make a human line here in front of the police. And this has just been the repeating pattern ever since 17th and O Street. They march a few blocks, get up to the police cruisers that have gone ahead of them, form a line in front of them, chant, show their signs, and then the police move on, and they move on with them. So my guess is here, we're going to cross the street, and my guess is that they might make a turn here off of 48th Street. Yep, that's what's happening. So very clear now that the police are guiding them through the city, almost like a marathon route.
We've cut the audio because there was some vulgar language there. To get you up to date if you're just now tuning in, this protest has been going on for, I would say, probably over an hour. A rally started at the Capitol around 6 today. From there, they've taken off hundreds of people. Now what's dwindled down, Brent's reporting maybe about 150 protesters walking. It seems what they're doing is when they hit a prominent intersection or when they run into police cruisers, they're forming a human barricade at some of these intersections, at some points even kneeling down, putting their hands up, saying, "Hands up, don't shoot."
Back.
And it sounds like Brent is back now. Let's go ahead and check in with him. Brent?
Let's get out of the street. All right. Well, we just ran into a protester. I apologize, sir. Sorry about that. The crowd has stopped here in the street. Now they're surrounding a police cruiser. This is the first sign of any sort of tension. We're going to get out of the street right now. And again, it's still not violent. Police are getting a little active. They're starting to move one of their police cruisers back. As you can see, they've surrounded one cruiser, two cruisers, another here to our right. And this is the first sign of any sort of, I guess I would say tension. Sorry about the sirens that are blaring right now. It's sort of deafening. We're going to make our way out ahead of this and stay in front of it. Police, again, the cruiser's starting to move. We've got one cruiser that's stuck in reverse right now. They can't turn around because of the protesters in front of them, who I would say are starting to act a little bit more aggressively. And it looks like it's a small number of people doing that. And out of the vast majority here, not doing anything other than marching and chanting and voicing their frustrations with racism and what they say is an unfair treatment of black people in America. All right. Police cruiser making its way now. Seems like things are calmed down again. We've got 3 police cruisers on the street with us. Again, all night they've been out ahead of the crowd. This is the first time that they have not been. One of the police cruisers is peeling off into a parking lot of a business here. But we're going to keep going with the crowd.
Hey, pictures, got that car out of there.
A sign. It looks like the police cruiser is, okay, now they're pulling off. Looks like they're going to back out, try and get ahead of the crowd. Yep, that's what they're doing. They're trying to. Protesters not letting them do that. Let's get out ahead of them here. All right, police no longer with the crowd. They have peeled off, and it's just the protesters right now as we make our way. To be 100% honest with you, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track of exactly where we are, but we're coming up to an intersection right now. We just turned off of North 48th Street. We're coming up to 52nd and R. 50th and R in that area. We're on R Street, excuse me. We're kind of near, okay, looks like the crowd has stopped. Not sure if something's happened, but the crowd has come to a complete halt and is gathering in the middle of the street, and they are spread out down the street, both directions, but there's definitely a congregation here in the middle. And again, we're kind of getting a better sense of how many people might be here now. Oh, we got a spotlight on us from the helicopter circling above us, and the crowd's starting to gather back up. You can be the judge at home. Easily more than 100 people. I'd say maybe close to 200. And it's still non-violent, still just a peaceful protest right outside of Doge University building here near the intersection of 50th and R Street. I can see police in the distance. The police officers that were with the crowd and had been sort of guiding the crowd through Lincoln have peeled out and are no longer here. I don't know if maybe this is the end of what was a predetermined route that they were going on. Looks like the crowd's starting to move again. There are a couple people right now who are standing outside their apartment and just watching the crowd here as it starts to move once again. And duck under the camera here. And there was a firework, an explosion that appeared to be a firework. There's smoke gathering. We saw some sparks shoot up into the air, but it looks like it was just a small firework, which is illegal to set off right now, if I'm not mistaken. It doesn't appear anyone's hurt. It appears, for the first time tonight, it looks like the crowd is sort of out of sync with itself. There's people stopped in one place. There's a group continuing on. I think we're going to head back towards, let's go towards the scene of where this firework went off. Looks like there's only a small number, I would say maybe a quarter of the group sort of making its way that way. The rest of the group has gathered back here. So we're gonna make our way back down there right now. Again, going on close to an hour now that this group has been making its way through Lincoln. Started at the Capitol. Now we're near 50th and R. So to give you an idea of how much ground we've covered tonight with this group. I've been live the whole time, and we're gonna stay with it right now. And we're right at the area where that explosion happened, which again we believe is just a small firework, and doesn't appear that anyone's hurt or it really caused anything other than a momentary distraction. And the crowd moving back towards police cars, which I think is sort of what's been the goal this whole time. Yeah, the vast majority of the protesters making their way back towards the area of 48th and R, and we're gonna walk there with them. And this is kind of the first time things have really calmed down, and I don't know if that means that the protest is going to start dispersing, Still really no indication of that, but there's no chanting, there's no honking. And Macy, we're going to throw it back to you right now, and we'll let you know when we're ready with an update.
Brent, if you're just now tuning in, we want to get you up to date. We've been following this protest for probably about an hour now. We've been cutting in live streaming for you so that way you can see what's going on. Now we have our other reporter, Taylor Trujillo, out there as well following a different group of protesters near 48th and O. Let's go ahead and check in with him and see what's going on at that location. Taylor?
Yep, standing by. Right now, in the bulk of all of the protests right now. Okay, let's see. We've got hundreds. There's definitely more than before. They're all posting up here in the intersection right now. As you can see, plenty of shooters all around. Intersection blocking traffic right here, as you can see. Protesters filling the entire intersection, 48th and our streets right here. Right above us too. There were reports of tear gas fired at 33rd and O Street. However, I didn't make it in time for that. Let's see, there's a drone. Someone's setting up a drone.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys kind of what we're seeing here. Again, I'm seeing these live images just as you are here in the studio. This crowd, much more vocal, a little bit more compact than the crowd that we saw with Brent earlier. Again, it sounds like they are chanting no justice, no peace. We just saw they were handing out masks, actually. A lot of people wearing these masks, not necessarily practicing this social distance. Again, this is near 48th and R. You can see they're holding up traffic, but really not seeming to care at all. A lot of people here, we're kind of spinning around to get a better look. You can see they're all in that intersection. I mean, that is probably, your guess is as good as mine, but I would say that's probably a little over 100 people. We hear horns honking. You heard an 18-wheeler just a second ago honking at this crowd. Obviously, this traffic is trying to get through. They're holding up that traffic right now. Similar situation to what we saw over on O Street, where people have been walking for blocks. Again, this crowd, as we mentioned, here we go, there's the NSP helicopter. Now this crowd as well, a little bit more vocal than the last, but still what we can see, very peaceful. We're not seeing any Lincoln police because, as they said, as long as these protests remain peaceful, they have no intentions of breaking it up, because as long as they're keeping the peace, they don't see a need. They understand people's frustration that comes from the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and that's why they're letting these protests happen. As long as it's peaceful, that's all right. And that's exactly what we're seeing. It seems like this crowd has kind of quieted down a little bit. Again, you saw that what we believe is the NSP helicopter kind of keeping a spotlight on everyone just to make sure that everything is remaining calm, which it is. They are holding up traffic. We can see that right now. They're just standing still in the middle of the intersection. When we first got to this shot, people were kneeling down, had their hands up. You can see a lot of them with signs. Many people in all black. Really just kind of, they're not moving as much as this last crowd. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to Brent. He actually is talking with a protester right now, and let's hear what this protester has to say. Why are they out there? What are they doing? Let's go ahead and send it to Brent Bonfleur. Brent? Well, actually, give us just a second. We're having some technical difficulties. Now, Some things that we've seen that really have kind of been moving, people were handing out water at one point saying this is what community is. And I'm assuming that's what we're going to hear when Brent talks to this protester now. Let's go ahead and see if we can get that shot up. Yep, here's Brent with the protester.
All right, Macy, we're here. I'm here with Audria. And Audria, you've been with this group all night. And tell me, why did you come out here tonight?
I came out here because things need to change. They say that we're together, but it don't feel like it. They told us to wear black, but I wore this shirt because this is a form of bullying, and it's not right, and it's not okay.
And your shirt says rise above bullying.
Rise above bullying.
And are you out here with friends tonight, or did you come out by yourself?
I'm out here with my sister and my friend.
And were you guys part of the group that was out last night as well?
No, I wasn't out last night.
So did you see what happened last night, or was that what prompted you to come out, or why did you decide to come out?
I decided to come out because I want to help make a change.
And what do you think of the protest so far? It appears to be nonviolent the whole time. What do you think about the job that they're doing, getting their message out?
I think that we're doing good. I feel like a little less aggression on like being up on the cop cars, but other than that, I think we're doing real good.
All right, thank you, Audrey. Thank you very much. All right, that was Audrey here, one of the hundreds of protesters out here tonight. And as you heard, they all just want to see a change. It's maybe sparked by what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd, but it definitely didn't start there. Of course, this has been an issue in our country for centuries, and it's manifesting tonight in Lincoln. Thankfully, as you heard her say, aside from just a few scuffles with some cars where they were banging on some cars, no violence. And there's a semi right now stopped here. We're going to try and cross the street, get you a better look at this. Let's go across the street this way. And there's a semi stopped in traffic. And it looks like we got a map up right now on your screen of where people are protesting and where they've been. And again, we're making our way across the intersection here of 48th and R Street, sort of by the Target. We're coming up on the Target parking lot and coming up on a semi truck that, if you can toss it back to our live picture, there are now protesters standing on top of the semi truck. I can't tell if there's a driver inside the truck. I'm going to try and see. There is. We're giving you a picture of that right now.
It tried to push its way past the people.
What's that?
That truck tried to barrel its way past the people.
I'm speaking to a protester, and he told me the truck tried to make its way through the protesters, and that's why they stopped it. There are people all in front of it, and a couple people standing on top of it. And there is a driver inside, but again, the group just sort of, I guess, upset with the way the truck was sort of driving. And now the people are getting off it. There's cheering. And again, no violence. And the truck, the crowd in front of the truck starting to disperse here a little bit. And the crowd's starting to gather up once again. Doesn't look like the truck's going anywhere anytime soon.
The truck driver let him go up there as long as it was peaceful.
And now we're just hearing from a protester or two that the truck driver actually told the protesters to get on top of his truck as long as they remained peaceful and didn't damage the vehicle. And that's what we're being told by protesters here right now, that the truck driver, who is totally fine, I can see him right now, told them to get on top of his truck. They're off now, standing all around the intersection of 48th and R. And crowd's starting to move again. I'm going to move with them here. And past an hour now that this has been going on. And really, this is just, again, a continuation of everything that happened last night. Excuse me, folks, sorry. Didn't mean to run into you. And making our way back to O Street now, trying to get a view. It's hard to see over all the protesters, but maybe the police are out in front and guiding them back that direction. I can see some smoke up in front of us. Actually, it could be just exhaust from a car or something like that, or someone spinning their tires. Someone revving their engine. We've heard plenty of that tonight. And it just gives the crowd a little juice. Not that they really need a lot. They're pretty pumped up tonight. as they make their way back to 48th and O Street. And we're going to go with them here. It's starting to get a little tangled up on the sidewalk. And now the chants again, no justice, no peace. Some of the first chants we've heard in a while. Again, things relatively calm, considering that there are hundreds of people walking through the streets of Lincoln at 9:20 at night. And yet, no smoke. It was just a car, maybe revving his tires or something like that. Excuse us, folks. Sorry about that. Quite a few people standing on the sidelines of this, watching it. Most of them with their cell phones out. And now, approaching the intersection once again, 48th and O Street. And we can now 100% confirm to you that that smoke we thought we saw was just someone burning their tires out, because it smells like burnt rubber and it stinks. And signs out here. Is my brother next? Is my dad next? The questions that people have. One here that says, end brutality, justice for all. Everyone here has a message tonight. All these people, and all with one similar goal, different experiences, but all joined together tonight in their message that things, as you heard the protester we just spoke to a few minutes ago, Audrey, say they want to see change. The don't shoot chant, once again, being chanted. No violence so far as we make our way to 48th and O Street. And no sign of the police right now. But again, they're dispersed throughout the city. And I believe monitoring several protests, possibly throughout the city tonight. Coming up on the intersection of 48th and O now. And it looks like some people sitting on top of maybe a minivan or some sort of van. The large sign that's sort of leading this group now. People with their cell phones out, taking pictures, recording this. A sign that says, say their names, of course referring to George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, all of those highly publicized cases of African Americans being killed, and many say unjustly, either at the hands of police or others. And that's why this is happening right now. And coming up on the intersection of 48th and O, and it looks like possibly someone's spilling some sort of liquid on the ground in the intersection. Not sure what that is. Might just be some water. The helicopter still circling above, keeping an eye on things as the protesters sort of begin to gather. And now we're headed back down O Street. So we are going back the way we came, and this whole thing got started at the state capitol, which is barricaded off. The Hall of Justice, other buildings, government buildings, city buildings, with extra security tonight. And as we turn down O Street, we'll eventually make our way to the scene of last night's protest and what turned into a small riot, where the Easy Go gas station was vandalized, burned, and looted. Okay, now I see what this water is here. Lee, if you can pan to the road, it's a little hard to see, folks. We're trying to get you a view. It looks like someone undid a fire hydrant, and that's what's spilling water all out on to the intersection of 48th and O Street. Some of the crowd stopping here to see that, blocking off the intersection. A decent number of cars starting to build up in all directions. And we're going to cross the street here, get to the other side, and here's what is spilling the water out into the intersection. Someone has uncapped a fire hydrant, and it's spraying water all over the intersection of 48th and O. We're not sure who did it. We didn't see it. And we could see it about a block in front of where we are now, and so it was done probably by someone in the very lead of this protest. And the protests are starting to make their way, some of them down O Street, some have broken off. There are cars trying to go through the intersection right now, and they're not having a very good go of it, but again, they are making their way through. Many of the protesters extremely respectful and letting them through. Nonviolent so far. Macy, we're going to take a break here and send it over to Channel 8's Taylor Trujillo.
Some startling image I'm not sure Lincoln has ever seen, something that we are seeing all across the country. Protesters gathering together, taking a stand, all for George Floyd, and maybe that's the beginning, or this is the end of what started it, but this is something that's been building up for quite some time, and I think that's what the message, I wrote down a couple things whenever Brent talked to Audria. She said, this is not right, I want to help make a change, and she said she acknowledged there was a little tension with some police cars. That was a very young girl out there just going, talking, and being out there with her sister, just standing up for what they believe in. And now we want to give you another look at a different area of this protest, because there are hundreds of people protesting right now on O Street, R Street, 48th, all across that area. Let's go and check in with our reporter Taylor Trujillo and see what's going on in that area. Taylor, can you tell us what's going on right now?
I'm at 48th right now, heading back towards O. As you can see, there's quite a bit of traffic congested down the line. These are the lingering protesters. They're making their way just south to meet up with the rest of the groups. Oh, it looks like looks like there's a spill. Maybe this is what Brent was talking about earlier. Fire hydrant busted open. Let's see. We're just working our way down the median. A lot of activity happening. Let's see, I'll give you guys a zoom in. There we go. Yep, some more protesters onlooking. Stalling the traffic, as we can see. So, gonna follow the flow of the protests as as we continue through the night.
Guys, I want to kind of explain to you also what we're seeing here. It seems that Taylor and Brent might be in a very close area because we can see that water on the road. And what Brent was saying, and maybe the images that you saw just a couple of minutes ago, was that someone uncapped a fire hydrant in that area and water was gushing out of that fire hydrant, filling the road. And that area, it seemed like there were certainly more cars than there were protesters, but there's no shortage of protesters on O Street, 48th Street, R Street. They're all across that area right now, hundreds of people just marching, walking, their hands in the air, some of them kneeling on the ground. Doesn't seem to be violent at all. We did hear kind of a small explosion, what believed to be maybe a very small firework, but again, no violence. One of those protesters did acknowledge maybe there was some tension when they did see some police cruisers, but other than that, extremely peaceful protest, especially compared to what we saw last night, what's happening in Omaha right now. We do know that there are some violent protests going on in that area, but certainly that is not the case here. You can see this image. People are standing with their signs up, and it looks like they're almost forming just kind of a person barricade, a human chain is what you could call it, holding their signs in the air, putting their hands in the air. You can see that sign right there says Black Lives Matter, and that sounds exactly like what they're chanting. And that seems to be what the message is for all of these protesters as they're walking. We talked to the one protester, that very young girl, Audria, maybe a teenager. She said that those protesters were told to wear all black, but she said she wasn't going to do that. She put on that red shirt that was standing up against bullying, and she said she was out there because she wants to help make a change. And we've seen tons of acts of kindness while people are out there handing out waters. Someone saying this is what community is. Again, no violence. What we've kind of seen these protesters doing, it's very staggered. I'm not sure they have a plan, they know what they're doing. But what seems to be happening is they'll walk a little bit, stop at maybe an intersection, form that human chain, kind of blocking off the intersections, and they gather once again and continue to walk. They've been walking for hours, guys, hours. It started at a rally at the Capitol around 6 o'clock this evening. That we showed you in our 6 o'clock newscast. Very peaceful. There were a lot of people, but this crowd has certainly grown. They've got barricades at the Capitol right now. Lincoln police aren't prepared. They did have barricades at the police station as well, but they've said multiple times a peaceful protest is welcome in this city. That is okay with them, as long as we aren't seeing what we saw last night when there was rioting, shattering of glass, fireworks being shot at police officers, and that is not what's happening today, thankfully. It seems like people are being safe. You can kind of see we're in a bit of a crowd right now. People wearing their mask, being cautious. But look at that water flowing. They uncapped a fire hydrant, and that water, that is, I mean, a startling image right there. That water just gushing into the street. Gallons and gallons of water. I mean, it's incredible to see this image right now, and you can see people are just standing by, kind of watching it. Let's see. Make a change, Black Lives Matter. White science equals violence. No KKK, no NRA. People are chanting. They like those signs. That's exactly what they are walking for. You can see they're on O Street right now. I want to say they're on O Street and maybe 48th is what it appears to be. We're getting a better picture of that water flowing. People standing here just kind of watching, just as maybe many of you at home are. Jarring images of hundreds of people walking these busy streets that we drive on every single day. But look, the water is just continuing to flow. We're not sure who uncapped that fire hydrant, why they did it. You can see that man's walking through. And he's actually swimming in the fire hydrant water right now. And now he's drenched. A lot of people cheering that on. I mean, this kind of shows you that it's certainly not violent at all. It's a peaceful protest. Maybe they shouldn't have uncapped the fire hydrant, but they're not, you know, trying to harm anyone. We haven't seen the heavy police presence at all. Maybe it looks like this group.
Black Lives Matter, stop killing innocent people, period.
Let them talk for a little bit and kind of share their message, because that's what they're there for. They're there to share that message with you, with the nation, with police officers. This is what we're seeing all across the nation right now.
They're moving back towards downtown.
And as Taylor just said, it seems like they're moving back towards...
on O, going west on O.
Going west on O. They're heading back downtown.
Stuff, right?
And that's kind of where they started earlier in the day. Like I mentioned, around 6 o'clock, they started at the Capitol, and then they were rallying there. They've moved on, I would assume, some 30, 40 blocks down O Street. They've taken turns. They've stopped a couple times. As we mentioned, it doesn't really seem like there is a plan here, but we know that the plan is to spread their message of Black Lives Matter. And we're going to go ahead and go back to Brent. He's walking with these protesters again. Brent, what's kind of going on that you're seeing right now?
All right, Macy, thank you. We are making our way down O Street right now, and someone just rushed out into the protesters with a grocery cart full of bottled water. Not sure where they got the cart from. It very well could have been given to them by one of the nearby grocery stores, or right by Super Saver and Target here near the intersection of 48th and O, because a lot of people are supporting what's going on right now at the protests. And we are told by Lincoln Police just a minute ago that there are other protests happening at various parts of the city. They are stationed around 27th and O. Again, we're at 48th and making our way towards 27th. And at 14th and O, and at the city county building and the Hall of Justice. So there are several hot spots right now for this, and no reports from law enforcement that anything has been violent at all tonight as we approach an hour and a half of this marching which has covered a lot of ground. We're with a couple hundred protesters. We're not quite sure how many might be in some of those other areas as we've been with this group, but we're headed that way, and we'll see what we find when we get there as we make our way back down O Street towards 27th Street, where we're told the next group is. A couple of carts now full of water for these protesters that people have. They're walking through the street here, giving you a view of it right now, filled with water. Again, not sure where they got the carts, but this has been nonviolent. We have no reason to think that they got them through any illegal means or anything like that. Cars stopped on the side of the street, many people waving, holding up their fists, a sign of solidarity with the hundreds of people who are out here tonight. And Black Lives Matter signs, as you can see right here. And things have started to quiet down, as they have been for probably the last half hour or so, after a very energetic first 45 minutes of this protest as it marched from the Capitol down to 48th and O Street. Again, the only signs of tension or violence at all that we have seen have been a few brief moments where protesters were banging on cars. At one point, we thought that there was a semi-truck that had been, and there's another firework that's gone off. That was what I was going to get to next, is there was a firework that went off. That's the second one we've heard tonight, small firework. There's a semi-truck, as I was saying, that was stopped by protesters. We were told by some other protesters that the truck driver actually told some of them to stand on top of his truck as long as they wouldn't damage it, and they didn't. And he let them get up there, is what we're told by several of the people here on the scene. Yes, Nils? All right, Macy, we're going to throw it back to you right now as we're approaching the intersection of 44th and O. Another fire hydrant just uncapped here and spread into the street. Macy, back to you right now.
And guys, that's the second fire hydrant that's been uncapped today. Now, I want to let you know, ABC News is reporting that 14 states have activated their National Guard because people are out protesting right now. That is not the case here in Nebraska. Peaceful protest here in Lincoln. Now, we have heard reports that in Omaha that might not be the case. But again, we're only covering here in Lincoln at the moment. We're going to go ahead and go to Taylor Trujillo, who's on another area downtown near O Street. Let's go and take a look and see what's going on in that area now. Taylor?
So I am currently walking west on O Street. Oh, it looks like they're preparing some fireworks. That's what I can see from my observations. There are a couple other fireworks. I'm going west on O Street. The plan is to go downtown. That's what, that's the consensus through all the protesters here. Let me see if I can get a better view. Let's get on in there. All right, so yeah, just running. This is O Street, so going west on O Street, back towards downtown. And we've got just feeding, going through. Hey, does anyone tell me about your cause right now? Tell me about your cause. What's going on?
We're standing for the fucking
Hey, come on. This is live television. We gotta calm ourselves. You, sir. What's going on? Dude. Ruined it, bud. You ruined it.
You know what? Ruined.
We're going to go ahead and come back on camera real fast. We just want to let you know, we did get a comment from Lincoln Police right now. Our PIO, Aaron Spoker, says they want people to stay safe while they are protesting, and they appreciate the peaceful protest. And that's really what we've been seeing all night long. Now, Brent kind of mentioned earlier, we saw something interesting of people sitting on top of an 18-wheeler. Weren't sure what's going on, but then protesters said that the driver of that 18-wheeler invited those people to stand on top because they were okay with what they were standing for. As long as they didn't damage the vehicle, they said, you can have a seat on the car. We appreciate what you're protesting. And that's kind of what Lincoln police are saying as well, standing by these protesters, letting them protest as much as they want to. I want to mention again that ABC News is reporting 14 states have activated their National Guard because protests are happening all over the nation right now. And as you're seeing here tonight in Lincoln, hundreds of people
it's getting violent.
walking for blocks right now, wearing all black. Actually, just want to point that out. We just saw someone throw something.
Yeah.
They're actually kicking this car. It appears things are getting a little bit heated here.
I'm good.
I want to let you guys know Taylor just said that he is doing all right. Our reporter, Taylor Trujillo, he's doing okay. He did say things are getting a little violent. As you can see, I'm not sure what's going on with this car, but
some protesters are assaulting a car. The guy was just trying to get through, beeping aggressively. So on both ends, there was some form of intimidation. But yeah, they started throwing water bottles and punching, kicking that vehicle going south on, 44th Street and O. Guy seems to have made it through, and then everyone just sort of carried on. So still going west on O Street. Plan is to go back downtown. Let's see, in the distance, I also saw some, there we go, some fireworks going off. People revving their engines. Let's see. I can guess that there's probably, I'd say upwards of 500 people out and about now. They've been walking since 6 p.m. Today. We don't know when it's going to end. The plan is to get downtown. I don't know if you guys saw that. There's another, firework going off. The entire group of protesters probably extends around it probably extends around a quarter mile, maybe a third of a mile.
Taylor?
What's this? We got people handing out water bottles right here.
Taylor, this is Macy. Can you hear me right now?
Some water bottles.
Guys, we're trying to talk with Taylor right now. Seems like we're having a bit of issues. It is very loud. I'm assuming he's having trouble hearing me. Taylor, can you hear me right now? Taylor, I just want to ask you a few questions. I mean, can you kind of describe,
I can hear you.
Other than what we just saw with the people throwing stuff at that vehicle, has this been a relatively peaceful protest?
Has this been a form of protest that we've seen
has this been a
throughout the day?
peaceful protest? We've seen people walking, like you said, for hours.
Oh yes, yeah, relatively peaceful. That was really the only assault that I've seen. It's everyone, closed fists in the air, away, not directing towards anyone, saying Black Lives Matter over and over again, chanting. It's all been in the form of word. There has not been any assault besides those water bottles. But I don't know if you guys can see right here. There's a group pushing shopping carts down the road. They're supplying water to the protesters down the street.
They're walking with shopping carts full of water bottles.
Gotta stay hydrated
these people
out there.
are supporting the protesters, agreeing with what they're standing up for, correct?
Yes, yep. They're all in positive spirits for and when they hand out their water bottles,
Taylor, you've been walking,
they are raising their fists in support.
Now, how many blocks have you guys been going?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. So it was from the Capitol all the way down to the Gateway Mall. All right, I'm right next to a motorbike right there. But all the way down to the Gateway Mall, and then that's when they turned north on, 48th Street, decided to take a U-turn at 48th and R, and now we're heading exactly back downtown. So I would say that, gosh, that walk,
I completely
it
understand.
feels like it's been
I know
miles
you're probably
already.
tired, but we're glad to see that you're staying safe. And you've been, I mean, in the midst of all these protesters, is there any kind of plan that they have here? Because we've seen them, like you mentioned, walking for miles. But, I mean, any kind of end goal that you see?
I've not seen an end goal, no. Of those I've spoken to, they are all, just as curious as I am about where it'll end, how it'll end. Everyone's just marching with a forward purpose, and I'll keep you all updated then. When we get some more. Oh, there's another water bottle thrown. Yeah, and keeps throwing water bottles.
Okay, well, Taylor,
so that's the only form of assault.
thank you. We want to tell you to go ahead and stay safe while you're out there. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go and check in. Actually, it seems like we are having some more technical difficulties, but we're going to stay actually with Taylor's shot here. You can see he just seems to be walking with some of these protesters. You can see cars on the sides. They're walking on the sidewalk, which is maybe the first thing that we've seen, the first time we've seen this during this protest. They're not in the middle of the street. Well, I say that, and fireworks going off. We've seen that kind of sporadically throughout the night as well. Not sure really what the goal is with the fireworks, maybe just to make some noise. Like I said, they've been going off here and there. And as Taylor mentioned, they have been walking for probably miles. We've been here on air showing you these live visuals for definitely over an hour. And as we've mentioned a couple times, this rally started at the Capitol, and that was at 6 o'clock. I would say they maybe started walking around 7 and really just haven't stopped. We've seen them stopping here and there when they get to an intersection or when they maybe have a confrontation with a car. Taylor, before we left him, he said that they were throwing some water bottles at some of these cars, but also people walking around with shopping carts. You can see on the left side of your screen right now, people are walking with shopping carts full of water bottles to hand out to some of these protesters because, as we mentioned, they've been walking for miles, and people just kind of standing with these protesters, agreeing with what they're walking for, and thankfully, it really hasn't been violent. We did see a bit of aggression as a car was trying to pass through these protesters, maybe some honking from the car. I'm not sure, I hope you can hear that. Sounds like some firecrackers are going off. Yep, and there we go. Taylor's kind of showing us right now. Right behind him. He's mentioned a couple times, it seems like they are starting to maybe walk back towards the downtown area, but not exactly sure what the end goal is here. They've been walking for hours, again, stopping sporadically at a couple intersections, just standing in kind of a human chain at some points. We've seen a couple police cruisers, but really nothing too serious. We did get a message from Lincoln Police. They said they want people to stay safe and they appreciate the peaceful protest, which is again what we're seeing right now. We want to go ahead and check back in with Brent Bonfleur, who's walking with these protesters still. Brent,
thanks,
can you tell us what's
Macy.
going
We just passed 37th and O Street, and the chants have started up again. George Floyd over and over again, which is again the reason why this is all happening across the country tonight. We're told the National Guard has been deployed in several states, not to our knowledge in Nebraska, but again, outside of this peaceful protest here in Lincoln, and one that, at least of initial reports we heard of when this was all just starting, a somewhat violent protest in Omaha. No reason for law enforcement or the National Guard to be out here right now. Again, everything peaceful, and the crowd just making its way down O Street. There are several cars that have joined the crowd now, just following along, kind of providing some light with their headlights as we're coming up on, I think we just passed 35th and O Street, making our way back down the road here. No justice, no peace, and George Floyd. Those are the chants right now as this crowd continues to make its way down O Street, and it's really dissipated now. I just looked behind me for the first time in a few minutes, and I would say at this point we're at less than 100 people, maybe around that number. There are a few it's harder to see, but things have really sort of spread out now. And so there's sort of a main group in the front, which we're going to try and catch up to here, of about probably 75 people or so. And then maybe about half that number following behind, but definitely a smaller crowd than when this first started, and the streets were just completely packed with protesters, easily over 200 when this all started. And so, again, no reason to think that this is going to end anytime soon, but it seems to be somewhat organized, at least until this point. But again, it's really starting to dissipate now as we get to the intersection here of 33rd and O Street. Small explosion that we heard behind us, that would probably be the third or fourth firework probably that we've heard tonight. No injuries at all that we have heard of. Very little aggressive behavior. There's been a good amount of graffiti done by some people, but other than that, very peaceful. And it looks like there's another group of ladies up here who we actually talked to earlier in the night, who are handing out bottles of water, and they're still here handing them out. And they're throwing them or handing them to protesters. And as you can see, they're gladly taking them because they've been out here for quite a while now, easily at an hour and a half that this has been going on right now. People starting to slow down as they approach the intersection. They're starting to group up here again. And it looks like these ladies had a car with a trunk just filled with water that they've been handing out all night, again, for over an hour and a half. George Floyd chants starting to pick up here in the intersection, and we're going to throw it back to you, Macy, for just a minute here.
Well, thank you, Brent. And we want to see, you can see a lot of people still protesting right now. And as we've been going back and forth between Brent and Taylor, right now, Taylor Trujillo is standing by with the woman who actually organized this entire protest. We've been wondering, what's the end goal? Why protesting now? Let's actually go and check in with Taylor and get some of those questions answered. Taylor?
Joke's on y'all, I ain't even lie.
Hey, okay, so I'm here with the 20-year-old brave woman who organized the protest. Can you go ahead and tell me your name?
My name's Pamela Lamb, and I live here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I decided to conduct this rally today for the purpose of George Floyd, who died last Monday. There's been a lot of black deaths in the community, not just in Lincoln, but all over the country. So I wanted to put my foot down, and I wanted to be that voice for the people of Lincoln and gather them together so we could be a bigger voice and we could make a difference in this community. That's one thing that I hold very true to my heart, is making a difference. So I felt like conducting this march, this rally, this protest was the best way to do that. And it's been peaceful all night. We've had fireworks, a little bit of like fire hydrants that I've blasted, but throughout the whole night it's been very peaceful. We started off at downtown, walked around the Capitol, walked to the police station, and we walked all the way to O Street, literally all the way by Michael's, and then now we're walking back downtown. So we just want our voices to be heard, really.
What do you say to the maybe the violence or aggression that other people have experienced here?
It's hard. It's really hard. Nobody likes violence. Nobody likes death. But we need to stand together to prevent this happening in the future, to prevent hashtags, to prevent rallies, to prevent protests. We need to stand together. We need to unite, and we need to let our voices be heard. Because without that, things like that are going to keep happening.
Is there an end goal, time, or place for the rally?
I don't think so. People are going to keep going until they feel like they don't want to. Last night we went until 5. So honestly, people are riled up. They're ready to go. So they're going to stop when they feel like they want to stop.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Touching interview right there. That was 20-year-old Pamela. She organized this whole protest. Some of the things I wrote down that she said, she wanted to put her foot down for what was going on, and she's all for making a difference. Also, she said she wants to stand together and unite. She said she wants to stop these hashtags, stop these protests from happening in the future. And I think that's the message that a lot of these protesters are going. I think a big deal is that she was 20 years old. That seems to be the crowd that is protesting right now. A bunch of more younger individuals out. And it looks like we're getting another image from Brent and Lee who are walking around. They're also, guys, they've been walking for quite some time, and as that organizer mentioned, they don't really have an end goal. They said last night they went until 5 a.m., and they certainly did. We were out there covering it, and now it looks like Brent actually has another interview. Let's go ahead and check in with him. Brent, what's going on?
Toss it to us live. Okay. Stand by. All right, thanks, Macy. I'm here with Gerald Parker. And Gerald, why did you come out here tonight?
Because I'm inspired, man. I'm very inspired to provide change in America. You know, we've been, as black folks, we've been out here for 300-400 years, been treated wrong, social injustice. We've been to the bottom, and we coming to the top. And we just want an equal shake on the judicial system. It needs to change, the laws. You know, we tired of being murdered out here. You know, if I do something wrong to you, I got to pay the penalty for it. You know, and it's only right that these police officers, when they attack us, when they murder us, when they kill us, and they do it savagely down here, that they got to pay a fair penalty for what they do, for their sins that they commit.
What did you think when you saw what was happening in Minneapolis and heard about the death of George Floyd?
You know, the death of George Floyd, you know, that's all too normal, you know, where I come from. You know, police brutality is something I'm very accustomed to. I'm getting tired of getting pulled out my cars and getting searched. I don't do drugs. I don't have those things. I don't, you know, they always say, you know, they use you got a broke tail light out, you know, as a means of pulling you over. Well, I always make sure my lights is good, my tail lights is good, so I don't have those problems. You see what I'm saying?
What do you think about the protests here tonight? What do you think about how they've kept it peaceful?
You know, I love how they keeping it peaceful, but you know one thing, sometimes people don't want to listen to peaceful protests. They don't want to listen to it. You know, but I love the love out here. I'm gonna tell you one thing right now. The generation that everybody makes fun of, the millennials, they're actually going hard. They are going hard. We always say they're uninspired. They don't work hard. But let me tell you about these guys. This group around 16 to 24-year-olds are going to make change in America. They're going to make great change in America. I've seen more inspiration out of this group of kids than I ever have seen in my life.
What do you think that says about the people living in Lincoln, Nebraska, that they're out here doing this tonight, and that many of them are youth?
The youth in this generation is going to bring change to America for all races, for blacks, for Mexicans, for natives, for Muslims, for Jews. Whites already got the white privilege, but they bringing up everybody else. This whole generation right here for America, the group of 16 through 24, is bringing change to America. I've never seen it in my life.
It doesn't look like this is stopping anytime soon. Are you going to be out here until it does stop?
I'm going to be out here. I went to Omaha yesterday, and I had to support. I had to support my peoples. I had to support social change, you know, and we just going to keep it going.
We're gonna take our support.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. Gerald Foster, thank you very much.
Gerald Parker.
Gerald Parker, excuse me. All right. Well, that covered a few blocks, and now we're getting closer to the intersection of 27th and now you can see several cars now with lots of protesters sitting on top of them. There's one right behind us. I'd say at least 8 people sitting on top of it. One in front of us here with at least 3. And we are making our way back to 27th and now, again, which was the site of the protest last night that turned violent when there was an apparent hit and run. And that sparked the violent protest. We're hearing a lot of fireworks, firecrackers right now. No one near them, no one hurt. And we are coming up again on 27th and O, and then we'll make our way past the Easy Go gas station that was looted and burned last night and early this morning. And so it seems like after kind of dying down for a while, the crowd is back and invigorated and re-energized. Many people honking their horns and riding on top of cars, in cars, and with their signs and chanting. And it looks like maybe they sort of caught a second wind here. They've spread out. What was about 2 to 3 blocks has now maybe become almost 4 blocks of protesters. But again, they're more spread out now than they have been. Can see law enforcement helicopter in the distance, keeping an eye on things. They've shown their spotlight on the crowd a couple times.
Guys, okay, so we were just listening to Brent. It seems like they're kind of circling back around O Street, kind of walking down near 27th and O, like Brent mentioned, where that riot was last night. But we haven't seen the same activity that we saw last night, thankfully. This has been a peaceful protest, and as many protesters have mentioned, they have no intentions of stopping anytime soon. As soon as it seems to be a lull, people get louder. They get more excited, and they just continue to walk, and there's no stopping them. Again, last night went until 5 a.m. That could be the exact same case tonight. It's now 10:02. We would be in our normal newscast, and we are still bringing you the news. We've been live on air for, I would say, maybe 2 hours now, just bringing you the sights and sounds of this protest tonight that has been nothing but peaceful. Hundreds of people walking, all of them with the same message, Black Lives Matter, and they want to stop this violence. They don't want to be violent protesters. They want to stop the killing. They're upset about George Floyd. They're upset about Trayvon Martin, stuff that's happened for years now, and they're tired of it. They're standing up. They're walking down O Street. They've been walking for hours since 6 o'clock today. I do want to bring you some national news because things are coming in. I've been keeping track on ABC News Twitter just to keep you guys up to date because we're bringing you what's happening in Lincoln. But what about all across the nation? Well, 14 states have activated their National Guard. The White House protests are continuing to pick up. We saw some of those same images last night of people standing on the White House lawn with their hands up, getting face to face with some of these officers and shining bright lights in their face at some point. In Philadelphia, 13 officers were injured and 14 were arrested. And it actually sounds like we have some video from KCBS. You can see right here. Now this is going to be in LA. Just to kind of compare, it looks like I'm seeing this video the same as you for the first time. I want to say those are police officers kind of forming a human barricade in multiple areas. It looks like protesters might be kneeling in between some of these barricades. I'm not sure. It does seem kind of like you can see a small fire at the very top of your screen. And you can see another bit of smoke kind of billowing from the bottom of your screen. That seemed to be a bit of red smoke. I see people with their hands on their heads is what it looks like. A heavy police presence here, which is certainly not what we've seen in Lincoln tonight. I'm not sure exactly if this protest has been violent or not, but I know for a fact that the LAPD has mobilized their entire unit. So they are keeping track on this. We saw earlier, you can see actually, this is a better shot, fire trucks at the top of your screen, a larger fire kind of at the bottom as we're zooming in. Stay with it right there. And then you can see that smaller fire up at the top. Doesn't seem like anyone's actively trying to put that out, but you do see those police officers standing there, as I mentioned, in a human barricade. And earlier today, we saw ABC News actually cut in, and they were walking with protesters, I would say hundreds, if not thousands of people walking in LA, a similar sight to what's happening in Lincoln. But we're not seeing this exact image, because as I mentioned, you can see those police officers. We have not seen any police officers here in Lincoln, maybe 3 police cruisers here and there. They're happy to let protesters protest as long as it's peaceful. I can't speak for what's going on exactly if this is a peaceful protest. We do see those small fires and that larger fire. It looks like people are maybe sitting on the ground in between. It almost looks like there's 2 walls of these officers. And actually now, let's go and take these live images at Washington, D.C. I mentioned earlier that protests were picking up at the White House. Actually, it looks like that is loading, taking a bit. Here we go. You can see a lot of people, and it looks like things are getting physical. People are getting physical here. It looks like they're fighting, definitely getting violent here as people are kind of dispersing. But in that small group, police, you can definitely see the police officers. This protest, certainly violent, as people are pushing and shoving. You saw someone just fall to the ground there. Again, this is in Washington, D.C. We've heard that protest is certainly picking up there, similar to images that we saw last night as people sat on the White House lawn with their hands in the air, getting face to face with some of these police officers, as it appears that they're doing right here. Things are certainly getting very physical from what we can see. It looks like people are kind of motioning maybe to call someone else over. Again, this you can see kind of zoomed in here. This is a sky image, so it's not as close up, so it's hard to tell exactly what is going on. But when we first took this image, we saw a bunch of people starting to kind of run in a certain direction and then gather in a group, and you saw maybe fists start to swing. Things are getting a little violent here. There's a bunch of people in white shirts here. I'm not sure if maybe this might be paramedics, EMS, but again, this is in Washington, D.C. We're giving you updates all across the nation as we're getting them. All of these live images, and this is happening all across the nation. We know that it's happening here in Lincoln. It's happening there in Washington, D.C. We just saw in L.A., in Philadelphia, as I mentioned earlier, 13 officers injured, 14 arrested. Tensions are running high in Denver with tear gas and confiscated weapons. Protests are really happening just everywhere right now, and we want to bring it back here. This is the last look that you're going to get here of Washington, D.C. as that shot kind of goes away. A lot of people in those streets. We want to go back now here in Lincoln. Excuse the shaky camera. This is one of our reporters out there, Taylor Trujillo. It appears he's walking. You can see people in that truck right here kind of riding along. They've got their mask on. I would assume part of the protest. I'm not sure if Taylor, they're right by that Easy Go. That was where the riot was last night, 27th and O Street. We saw a lot of startling images last night. Hard to see, fireworks being thrown at police officers, glass being shattered. I don't think that is the case right now as Taylor swings around.
That's not Easy Go.
It actually doesn't, I'm not sure if that was Easy Go. You can see people in their cars now actually riding through this protest. That sign says Black Lives Matter. That has been the message throughout the night. We've seen that sign over and over again. We've heard that chant many a times. We even saw spray painting BLM on some of the streets as they were walking down O Street. Now, we want to go ahead and get you a live picture from New York here. It looks like they are also doing a similar thing to what's happening here in Lincoln, walking down the street, protesting. Guys, this is happening everywhere. This is the third shot we've shown you from across. It looks like they probably have a helicopter in the sky right now, just kind of keeping track of these protesters. This one does not appear to be violent like the one we saw in Washington, D.C. just a few moments ago. Hundreds of people, again, walking these streets. I'm not seeing heavy police presence at all. This one seems to be just as peaceful as the one that we've seen in Lincoln tonight. People making their way down. We can't see their signs, but a lot of this is really stemming, as we know, from the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis on May 25th. A hard image that many of you had to see as that officer knelt on George Floyd's neck, where he later died from that incident. And people are fed up. They've had enough, and now they're protesting all across the nation. They want to see change. Now, we do know that the officer that was kneeling on George Floyd's neck has been arrested. Other than that, that's really the biggest update that we've heard in this case, and that's kind of what a lot of people are asking, is just justice for this moment, but also not just justice for George Floyd, but more so a change for our nation, for America. We've heard that our protesters have said that they wanted to put their foot down. They want to make a difference. They want to stand together and unite so they can stop this from happening. Now, I want to show you again, we're going to go back here to Lincoln. This is again our reporter Taylor Trujillo. He's walking with these protesters on 27th and O. Traffic does appear to be relatively normal, but people are still walking in the middle of the street. But traffic is certainly flowing more than it was, I would say, an hour and a half ago, when there was absolutely no traffic going down O Street because there were so many protesters. What we've kind of seen here in Lincoln is that these people are kind of dispersing. They're going different directions. But what we've heard seems to be that the end goal is to make it back downtown, kind of where this all started, at the Capitol at 6 o'clock, 4 hours ago. Over 4 hours ago, this rally started at the Capitol. I would say around 7 o'clock, people started walking, and they've been walking for miles, for blocks. This sign says, "Police brutality must end." That's the message everyone's saying, along with Black Lives Matter. As I mentioned, they've had enough. They're fed up, and that's what these people are walking for. They're keeping it peaceful here in Lincoln. A positive sight to see. We know that Lincoln police are okay with this. They're saying they want to keep people safe and they appreciate the peaceful protest. They are asking people to avoid O Street, to kind of stay out of that area, just to keep these protesters safe, to keep yourself safe, because we've seen a lot of people walking the street. You can see there's another protester, something that we've seen a lot of. They're just walking with shopping carts full of water bottles, handing those out to some of these protesters. And that's what they've been doing all night, because they've been walking for quite some time, miles and miles, blocks and blocks. You can kind of see things are still, cars are certainly moving a lot more than they were earlier, but certainly not as many people. We started this protest around, I think we started bringing you this live on air around 8 o'clock, and there were hundreds of people. Taylor mentioned at one point he believed there were 500 people protesting, walking down O Street, signs in their hands. It certainly looks like that has dwindled down. But we've heard from the organizer of this protest, who was only 20 years old, Pamela. She said she has no end goal in this protest. They're going to go wherever they can, however long they want to. We know last night they went on until 5 a.m. and then things started to break up around that time. But it seems, as we mentioned, kind of as things start dying down, it seems that everyone gets this fire kind of lit in their belly, and they just get louder. And they show their signs again. We did see one, I want to point out, very important, one little bit of violence at one point. Tensions were high. A car was trying to pass through some of these protesters, and they were honking their horns. And that's whenever things got a little bit heated. People started kicking the cars, throwing water bottles. But guys, that's really the only point of violence that we've seen. We've seen them uncap 2 fire hydrants. Water was spewing in the roads, but people were playing in that water. Certainly not violent. Nothing like we saw last night. And that's really been, I think, what we've all been hoping for, is that this didn't turn into what was last night. The violence, the vandalism. We've seen spray paint as people have walking. You can see people on cars right now. We've seen spray paint walking.
Down a stretch of O, what am I seeing, 25th and O? The protesters have spread out a little bit. Some people are getting rides from, rides on the top of cars and such, as you can see. People are getting tired. People are getting tired, but they're still moving forward. Again, we do not know where the end destination is, just following the flow. And let's see, There's plenty of protesters walking in the middle of the street with their signs. Let me see if I can, I'm gonna have to run a little bit, get a better shot of them. There we go. Okay, here we go, here we go. Let's get these guys. So protesters carrying signs, was it respect existence or expect resistance? America, KKK. So just following the protesters down the street. Again, hundreds of protesters, hundreds of protesters walking down the street. The traffic is backed up all the way, maybe all the way back down to Owen 48th, where they decided to turn around and work back towards downtown area. We've, let's see, police brutality must end. There's the sign right in front of me. You know, there's probably a large majority of the protesters carrying signs, although the rest of them are, you know, simply just walking, wearing masks. Oh, here's a guy right up here. He has a cart full of water bottles, was handing them out to the protesters. Let's see, we can get up and, hey, thank you very much, sir. So for providing hydration for these protesters. So, as you can see. Hey, where did you get these water bottles? Super Saver on 48th and O. He picked up the water bottles and he's been distributing them all throughout the, let's see, the protesting community. So, just following the flow of all the other protesters. Oh, no, that's just a Gatorade. So the only form of assault that I've seen is people throwing water bottles at cars. You know, some people were getting a little aggressive. I saw a woman say, "I was going to spit in your face" to a car that was driving by. You know, I didn't get there early enough to see what the sort of altercation was, but just simple words of aggression right there, you know, that could escalate so easily. That's what we want to avoid at best. So, let's see if I can show you guys all the way down. Hundreds of protesters lining the streets. And we're just about to cross, let's see, Antelope Parkway, and then we'll be in the downtown area. 22nd Street right here. No buildings, to my knowledge, have been vandalized. It's been relatively peaceful, so, you know, another good sign.
Absolutely, a good sign is that.
Yeah, it's pretty calm right now. Again,
Yeah, absolutely a good sign that things have remained peaceful throughout the night, as Taylor mentioned. Only thing that we've seen is maybe throwing a water bottle at a car here and there. Again, not the scene that we saw last night, thankfully, and people just really standing up, as we saw tons of signs saying Black Lives Matter. People just looking to take a stand, wanting to make a difference, make a change here in Lincoln. We've seen it all across the nation. We're seeing it here tonight, which is something almost refreshing. And again, police are saying that they want people to stay safe. They appreciate the peaceful protest. Again, if you can, avoid O Street because these people are protesting. They've been walking for hours. They're probably a little tired, as I'm sure they are, because it's been miles. We've been showing you this stream for over 2 hours now. We would be in our normal newscast, but we're showing you these live images of these people protesting because we feel that it's important for you to know what's going on in your community. And now we want to go and check in with our reporter, Brent Bonfleur, who's actually got an interview with some of these protesters.
I'm Nelson.
Brent?
Nelson. All right, Mason, we're here with Nelson and Alyssa,
Tanner.
And guys, you got some carts here with bottles of water. What are you doing with these?
We had started off at Super Saver. We got a bunch of Gatorade and water, and we put them in carts, and we decided that we were going to walk down the street with our We're going to hand these out to the people that need them and that are thirsty, you know, so we can help out the cause.
What do you think about the protest so far? The fact that it's remained peaceful and everyone's doing a pretty good job of staying calm.
I think it's going great tonight. I think everybody's just waiting to see if the cops are going to come out and try to retaliate like they did last night. But right now, I think it's going great so far.
What about you? What are your thoughts on the night?
Shit, it's going all right tonight, but last night got way out of hand. Got way too out of hand last night.
Hopefully it stays calm tonight, and a lot of people showing support. Like you can see here, they got all these bottles of water. Many people have been handing them out. Nelson, guys, thank you for your time. Appreciate that. All right, well, we are at the intersection of 17th and O Street right now, and people once again forming kind of a human barrier in the street. Still a decent amount of traffic out right now, but right now it's kind of at a standstill. There's another fire hydrant across the street that's been let loose, and water spilling out into the street. I would say that makes about half a dozen that we've seen down O Street and other parts of R Street and 48th Street throughout the night here as the protesters are starting to make their move again. We're going to cross the street with them. And looks like the group has split up quite a bit, starting to disperse a little bit more now. But we're back almost to where they started. Excuse me, we're at Antelope Valley Parkway, coming up on 17th Street here. Almost back to where this started. Again, it started at the Capitol after a peaceful rally that involved community leaders, local pastors, the police chief. Yes, we're moving west on O Street right now, and coming up on 17th and O right now. And again, very peaceful all night. There's been a few confrontations with people and vehicles, which you can understand. People might be trying to get home and they want to get through this crowd, but by and large, everyone doing a great job of being respectful of both the protesters and the drivers and letting each other move about without any problems, which has been really good to see. Still a lot of people out just watching this as we're approaching, going on towards 2 hours of this now live that we've been with you. More chance of don't shoot right now as we approach 17th and O right by the UNL campus. Again, headed towards downtown on O. And again, it's hard to tell. They're pretty split up now, but I would estimate around 100 people still here. Although there is a larger group that we're coming up on, so that number might. I'm not quite sure if this is another group of protesters. I believe that there were other groups kind of spread throughout the city, and I think we're going to try and get a traffic camera view. Oh, we just hear some glass breaking right now. I believe it was just a bottle and not a business window or anything. No businesses, as far as we can tell, have been vandalized outside of some graffiti and a far cry from last night when we know of at least 9 businesses that were vandalized and some severely. So here in the intersection now, 17th and O, groups starting to gather up, people dancing on top of a car in the middle of the intersection, chanting "say his name," and then the answer from the crowd, of course, is George Floyd. People inside some businesses here watching out the windows, people sitting in their cars, people sitting in the back of pickup trucks just watching this protest as it makes its way. Now it's on the move again down O Street, so this is originally where they turned onto O from the Capitol when this all started earlier tonight. Well, it looks like they're going a different route on the way back. Yeah, no sign that it's going to stop anytime soon. And as as you can see, traffic camera view right there of this crowd. And we're kind of in the thick of it now. You can see the crowd making its way down the street. I can see the state capitol on my left. And we are making our way now towards the federal courthouse in downtown Lincoln right now. And we're having some mic issues, I think, and we're gonna toss it back to you, Macy, for just a second, get those figured out, and then we'll be ready to come back down here to 16th and O.
Brent, as he said, 16th and O Street. We've seen this protest kind of very sporadic throughout the evening. They're going on about 2 hours. We've been showing you these live images of them walking all across Lincoln from the Capitol all the way down to 48th and O, 48th and R. They've turned around. They appear to be headed back to the Capitol now, where all of this started at a rally around 6 o'clock this evening. Now, I want to kind of turn tables here and kind of bring you some national news. We've been keeping track as things are going on here, because this is something that's happening all across the nation. ABC News is reporting that 14 states have activated their National Guard. A lot of places, unfortunately, not like Lincoln, we're not seeing this in Lincoln, but a lot of places are seeing violent protests. Things are picking up. In Denver, tensions are running high with tear gas and confiscated weapons. In Atlanta, police and protesters are continuing to clash. But here's a look at our traffic cam. Traffic appears to be flowing pretty fluidly right now. And it looks like the protesters are traveling west on O. Just a second ago, you could see a big group of protesters. What we've seen kind of throughout the night happening, though, is as they were all sticking together, they kind of slowly began to separate, and as I mentioned, it kind of become a bit more sporadic. We talked to the protester organizer, Pamela, who was a 20-year-old woman, and she said, you know, there is really no end goal of where they want to end up tonight. They're just going to walk until they feel like their message is heard, until they feel like they've reached their goal of letting people know that Black Lives Matter. And that, you know, seems to be the case all across the nation, but certainly, thankfully, here tonight, it hasn't been violent, and that's something that Lincoln police are thankful for. I know the governor was calling for that, the mayor was calling for that. And we're going to go ahead and go back to Brent Bonfleur right now. It looks like he's walking with some protesters. Let's see what's going on. They're picking up pace.
All right,
Brent.
we just turned off of O Street, and we are headed towards the Capitol. This is where it all started earlier tonight, and it appears that this might be where it ends, as the front line here of protesters is at Centennial Mall and N Street. And we're trying to get ahead of them here, but as you can see ahead of you, here's the front line of protesters making their way through the intersection. People stopping to get water from some folks in their car who just drove up with bottles of water to hand out to these protesters. We've seen it all night. Shows of support for everyone out here marching as they make their way. We're just a couple blocks from the state capitol, and water is a hot commodity, I can tell you that much. And looks like we got our traffic camera up here showing you the overhead view of everything going on as the crowd continues to chant, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," as we're just about a block away from the state capitol, which at least earlier tonight was barricaded, the streets around it. The state patrol was providing security detail, and we're gonna join in here with the crowd a little bit as we make our way right here to the state capitol. And you can see the signs, you can hear the chants. Looks like someone might have just thrown a firework, and now we just heard that firework. There it is, drawing cheers from the crowd as that firework explodes. There have been half a dozen or so of those fireworks right now. We'll just let the crowd speak to you for a minute here And you can clearly hear what their message is. All right, coming up here to the Capitol building, and it looks like there's definitely a line of people on the front steps of the Capitol. From here, it's hard to tell if they are protesters with signs or some sort of law enforcement with riot shields. I believe it appears they're just protesters with signs, although there is security at the Capitol, the County City building, Justice Hall of Justice, and other government buildings throughout Lincoln. And behind us, someone's setting off a bunch of fireworks behind us and in front of us. And you can hear them and see them as the crowd makes its way to the Capitol building. If I can see it clearly, there's a car with several people on top of it. I thought maybe they had an American flag. That's not the case. Hard to tell how many people there are. Easily 100. The crowd really has ebbed and flowed throughout the night. When this first started, well over 200 people, I would estimate, in the crowd. And it waned maybe down to some points as little as 100 people, but I've definitely noticed throughout the 2 hours or so that we've been out here, some new faces that are joining the crowd, some faces that we saw last night during the protests. There you go. It's like the 4th of July out here right now with all these fireworks going off. And the crowd is stopping at the fountains in front of the state capitol building and starting to form a fairly large group here. Again, the crowd there's a car right now driving right up to the crowd, and that is not a city street that they're on. They've been with us for most of the night here, the folks on that car. As we're going to make our way around the side here and just kind of stay out of the way for a minute as this crowd continues to chant the name of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, things like "Don't Shoot," and other chants as they're gathered here in front of the state capitol building. And they're launching off a firework that just exploded above us. It looks like maybe there are a few what appears to be security, most likely the state patrol, outside the capitol building. We're kind of getting to an elevated position here above the crowd. Excuse me. People are starting to dance and cheer. I'll just sort of let the camera pan and give you an idea of how many people are here, because I've kind of given up guessing at this point. Well over 100. It could very well be 200 or more. They've got a
Hello?
Mayor, can you hear me all right?
Hello?
Yes. How are you tonight?
I'm well. Who's this?
This is Macy Meyer with Channel 8. We're breaking into our newscast. We've been covering these protests all night long, but we wanted to take a moment to kind of talk to you. I mean, what are your thoughts so far? This has been a far cry from what happened last night. Today, actually, a peaceful protest.
Yes, there was a moving gathering, a rally at the Capitol earlier this evening where people shared their stories, people shared their fears and their concerns, and called for protest, but peaceful protest. And it was a moving experience for everyone who was there. People want to be seen, people want to be heard, they want to know that people are listening, and that even if what happened in Minneapolis happened in Minneapolis, that kind of fear of unequal treatment, of racism, of bigotry happens in communities all across our country. It happens in Lincoln, and that it's not going to change unless more people pay attention, listen to the experiences of others, and try to make change. And that's what this is about.
Absolutely. And you talk about, making a change, and these people want to be heard. Hundreds of people have been walking along O Street. Do you think they're heard tonight, Mayor?
I think they're heard tonight. I think that people are paying attention. You and your crew have given so much attention and care with the coverage you've given tonight. And, the chief of police was down at the rally. I was down at the rally. Council members at the rally. People are paying attention. We want a Lincoln where everyone feels like they belong, where everyone feels like they are safe, where everyone feels heard and seen and cared for. And that's what they're calling for. They're calling for a life where it doesn't matter what color your skin is, that you don't have to walk out of your home and fear a different experience of driving down the street based on the color of your skin, the fear of being pulled over, the fear of violence. That fear is real. It's real, and it's here in Lincoln. And it's only going to change when more people are paying attention. And their peaceful protest tonight is bringing so much attention to that concern and for the need for all of us to be better, to be more compassionate, to be more aware, to be more understanding.
Absolutely.
And to see people as people, regardless
Mayor,
of the color of their skin.
Your message that you kind of share a lot and that I appreciate is telling people to be more compassionate. Is that the end goal that we're reaching here as all these people gather together, sharing that same message that Black Lives Matter and that we all kind of need to stick together and put a stop to what we're seeing all across the nation?
Absolutely. We have a painful 400-year history in our country of intolerance and racism. It is a stain on our society and our history and our country. And each of us can play a role in making life better by looking at people in the eye and seeing them as people, by having conversations. And for people who are watching and feeling uncomfortable tonight, if they're seeing the coverage, they feel fearful, I encourage them not to be afraid, but to open their minds and their eyes and their ears and their hearts and try to understand where the anger is coming from. If they don't understand, have a conversation about it. Try to learn. This is an important opportunity for everyone in Lincoln to learn how to be a better neighbor, to learn how to be more empathetic to those who may not be like them at a glance, and for us to be unified in our concern and compassion for one another.
Absolutely. And you talk about having those conversations, and it's an unfortunate circumstance that led us to have these conversations, but I agree with you. I think people finally being heard is, you talk about where does that anger come from? I think it comes from not being heard. And people taking a stand tonight, like we mentioned, hundreds of people filling O Street. We see cars driving down that street every single day. But tonight, hundreds of people walking down O Street. I mean, we've seen it all across the nation. Mayors, have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, I certainly haven't seen anything like this in Lincoln. But what I see are my neighbors. I see students. I see my daughter's classmates from Lincoln High. I see teachers, educators, moms, children, and people who are rightly outraged. Everyone should be outraged. What happened in Minneapolis is absolutely unacceptable and must be condemned. And I think what is wonderful to see is how many people are outraged. We don't want to stand for this in our country. We don't want to stand for this in our state, and we certainly don't want to stand for this in our city. And what's important is that we continue to take the pain and suffering and turn it into a force for good. And the peaceful protests are a step in that direction.
And Mayor, I want to ask you, to these people that are out protesting right now, what would you say to them?
I hear them, and I see them, and I value them, and what they say is so important and valuable. And I thank them for their peaceful demonstration of care and concern for humanity. And I hope that they will continue to help others who aren't with them on the march tonight to come along with them in a bridge to better understanding, in a bridge to being better neighbors and residents of this community and of this country. We can't afford to let more violence and brutality disproportionately affect people in our country just because of the color of their skin. We have to see each other, and we see them. We see each other today.
Absolutely, and that's, what we've seen for, my gosh, the past 5 hours as this started at a rally at the Capitol. And Mayor, I hate to go backwards to last night, but obviously some very startling images for Lincolnites and for people all across Nebraska to see such violence. I was there, and it was extremely hard to be there and see these people with such anger and such violence in their hearts, throwing things, shattering glass windows, these businesses. Is there any intention? I mean, today is obviously very peaceful, but we've heard that in Omaha, maybe that's
This
not
has
the
been
case.
a Channel 8.
But there's 14 different states that have the National Guard out right now. Any intentions of that happening here for us?
What happened last night was terrible. Violence replacing and being answered by violence doesn't help us come together, and it doesn't help us move forward as a society. And that doesn't honor the lives of those who've been brutalized, who've experienced racist violence and terror. Tonight at the Capitol, I heard leaders and community members and young people calling for change, calling for peaceful protest, calling to be heard, calling to be seen. And when I've been downtown this evening watching the march, I've seen peaceful protest. I've seen justified outrage being expressed in a peaceful way. And that's what we want. Is we want more people to pay attention, more people to hear their message, but without the violence that is a distraction from their message and from the unity that we need to move forward.
And Mayor, I want to let you know, we did just show some video from last night, some of that smoke in the area, people kneeling on the ground. As our mayor, as our neighbor, as a mother, how hard was that for you to see when you woke up so early this morning? I mean, that was from midnight all the way to 5 a.m. You wake up to these sights and these sounds of terrifying scenarios. How hard was that for you?
Well, it was really, really hard because just, in the hours the day before, I had seen peaceful protests at the Capitol, and I'd seen peaceful protests at 27th and Capitol Highway, and I'd had a conversation with the police chief about how proud, we were that people were gathered, but they were peaceful. I mean, I was proud that people cared enough to take to the streets, and I was proud that it was peaceful. To wake up to see the imagery from the middle of the night, in the wee hours of the morning, was a loss. It was destruction of property, people being hurt. All of a sudden, that became the focus instead of their important message of calling for justice. That message of calling for justice is what we all need to be thinking about, not sweeping up broken glass cleaning up burned out buildings and stitching up people's scalps. The important thing is the message for change and for social justice. And that kind of violence gets in the way of that powerful message, and it turns people away. So I am so grateful to the folks who are out tonight calling for justice, calling for change, but doing it without violence, doing it in a way that more people will hear them and see them.
And they've kept it peaceful all night for, as we mentioned, 5 hours now, since 6 o'clock when they were at the Capitol. Mayor, do you have any intention of shutting this down, or, I mean, are you going to let them go all night?
Look, people have a right to make their voices heard, and if they want to go all night, they are going to go all night. And I don't have intentions of shutting anyone down. What I do care about is their safety. I hope that as darkness has fallen, that they'll take great care, because we don't want anyone to get hurt. We don't want anyone getting hit by a car. We don't want any accidents to happen. We care about their safety, and so we hope that they will be very careful and take care of each other. And in the middle of a pandemic, I was pleased to see that so many were wearing masks. But I am concerned, too, that people could be put at greater risk of this virus. So we hope they are taking care to keep distance from one another, to keep those masks on as they protest, and to stay safe.
And we've seen such kindness tonight. I'm not sure if you saw the images of people walking around with shopping carts with water bottles, and then people passing them out to protesters. Even at one point, an 18-wheeler driver stopped and let protesters sit on the 18-wheeler and said, as long as you have no intentions of damaging my property, I'm all for you spreading your message and spreading your voice. And going forward, this we had last night, we have tonight, we're seeing it all across the nation of people continuing to protest. Do you see this going forward in the future for longer? And I mean, at that point, what kind of communication do you have with maybe Chief Flymeister, maybe the mayor in Omaha, all those kind of conversations moving forward if this continues?
Well, I can't predict the future, but I would say I experienced that kindness tonight when I showed up at the Capitol and someone offered me a bottle of water. I mean, you're absolutely right. People were looking after one another. And even when the police chief spoke, and some who were there didn't want to hear from the police chief, many others tried to drown out the criticism with their applause for him showing up to listen and to hear what people had to say and to offer a few words. So I think people are hungry for conversation, hungry for dialogue, hungry for exchanges where we gain greater understanding of people's life experiences and how disparate and different they can be depending on the color of your skin. And that's a conversation we need to keep having if we're ever going to move past and heal and diminish that kind of intolerant, bigoted behavior. More people have to understand what it's like to walk in the shoes of one another. So I fully anticipate that conversations will continue, whether or not they're driven by protest or by raised awareness because of the protest. That is what we want for our community and for our children.
And thank you so much, Mayor, for joining us. That was Mayor Laren Gerler-Baird on the phone. Mayor, I want to thank you for keeping our citizens safe, for the compassion that you continue to share with everyone. And honestly, your honest canter that you just seem to give to the city, like you said, your neighbors, your friends. I fully, heartedly believe that, you're trying to keep us all safe, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk with me tonight. I know it's a little late, but I know that our viewers appreciate hearing from our leader in the community right now.
Well, thank you, Macy, and thank you for giving such great coverage to the voices of so many in your community who are hurting and who want to make sure that others know that there's a better road for Lincoln that we need to be traveling down, and who are there to try to pave it. And we need to all be traveling down that road together. So thank you for giving coverage and shedding light on how people are feeling tonight in Lincoln.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night, and stay safe, Mayor.
Okay. You too. Thank you.
And now we want to go ahead and get you an update on your weather. We're going to check in with meteorologist Sam Wilson, who's going to get you the latest on the weather tonight. Sam?
Storm Alert Team Forecast from meteorologist Sam Wilson.
Especially for a late night stroll, as I see many of you are on a nice peaceful walk. Highs today earlier, we saw highs into the 60s, 70s, and check out, oh, lucky guys in McCook, 84 degrees. A nice spring day out there, a little cool for us, but you can't beat it, right? Started off a little rainy, and then we rebounded nicely with some sunshine. 61 degrees still, so if you are out and about, which I know many of you are, it is a nice conditions out there. A little bit on the humid side, but pretty dry until about the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. time frame. We could see a few spotty showers if you're still out and about. Temperatures right now into the 50s and the 60s. 58 in Seward, 59 in York, 58 up in Columbus. Right in here, we are sitting real nice at the 61 degree mark. Now, like I mentioned, we could have a few spotty showers hanging around. Here we are at 2:30 this morning. Now, it could be, or later on this evening rather, it could be just very spotty in nature, less than 1/10 of an inch. So if you're out and about, you could feel a little sprinkles on you or not. And then 6 a.m. time frame, a little bit of those sprinkles start to subside. We could see some drizzle tomorrow morning, but it will clear nicely for the afternoon time frame, bringing in these southerly winds. Now, that will help our temperatures bump up into the upper 70s tomorrow, but breezy conditions throughout the entirety of your day, dying down just a bit tomorrow night, and then, yes, they come right back for your Monday. Breezy conditions again, but hey, our temperatures get fired up yet again thanks to that. So tonight, 56 degrees, those spotty showers on and off again from about midnight until 3 a.m. time frame, and then tomorrow could see a few spotty showers in the morning. Rest of the day looking nice and clear, and highs all the way up to almost 80 degrees. A really nice warm spot there for you. If you're liking the heat, well, you're gonna like this 10-day. Check it out. Starting with some hot conditions on Tuesday, all the way up into the 90s. Spacey, what do you think about that?
My gosh, well, I don't know if I'm exactly ready for it. The 90s, it's gonna be a
little bit hot there, but you know, some of us are ready for shorts and flip-flops, so I'm thinking maybe some nice summertime weather, especially for 1st of June. I'll take it.
I was gonna say, very fitting for the month that we're headed in, so that way, I mean, hey, we'll take it. It's not too bad.
That's right.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Sam. And we've been giving you coverage all night long. We've been following Brent Bonfleur as he's walked the streets of Lincoln all the way down O Street for multiple blocks. We want to check in with him one more time to see what this protest is looking like. Brent?
All right, thanks, Macy. We just passed 17th and M Street here. We're towards the tail end of the protesting group. We just passed 17th and M, Macy, at the tail end of the protesting group right now. I would say, just looking at some of the faces here, it's kind of transitioned to a younger crowd. I would say there have been some people here who are very young. I would say maybe even as young as 10 years old. A lot of people who appear to be teenagers and lots of young adults. And that's been the case through most of the night, but it's definitely turned into a younger crowd right now. And the numbers, though, are staying pretty strong as people continue to light off fireworks and right on top of cars, as you can see right there. But right now, kind of just meandering through the streets. It looks like the head of the group has turned back towards the Capitol. So not a lot of new developments here in the past few minutes, but we're gonna stay down here, and we're gonna throw it back to you right now, Macy. But we'll be here live to keep you updated on anything if it does develop. But for right now, Macy, back to you.
Thank you so much, Brent, and thank you to also Taylor Trujillo. They've been out walking for miles and blocks. We want to thank you for sticking with us for this almost 3 hours of live coverage as protesters walked down the streets of Lincoln, standing up for what they believe in, shouting Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you sticking with us. We do want to let you know, as Brent mentioned, our reporters are going to be out there until this ends, and we're going to keep you up to date throughout the night on our social media and on our website at KLKNTV.com. Again, thank you. Everyone stay safe. We're going to go back to your regular programming, which is Entertainment Tonight.
This has been a Channel 8 Eyewitness News special report. We now return you back to programming.
Here I explain all of the must-dos to make sure you get top dollar for your home and what to look for when buying or selling a home. These guides are